Hey everyone, welcome to Craving Something Scary, where it's all horror all the time. Now in this video, I'm going to continue discussing the possibility of bringing back past characters from previous Scream films into Scream 6 or potentially even Scream 7. Now, if we believe radio silence when they say that everything is up for grabs from the previous films, then these two characters are certainly in play. So, now the time has come to discuss the possibility of the return of Joel from Scream 2 and Martha Meeks from Scream 3 and Scream 5. Let's go! So the last time we saw Joel, who's played by Meeks-Martin, was as Gail's cameraman in Scream 2. There's an infamous story around the character of Joel, which is that he was originally scripted to be killed in Scream 2, and that is correct. And Dwayne, however, approached Wes Craven and asked that if instead of his character being killed, as is expected, how about instead he has a cab come to pick him up to take him away, and he survives. So Wes, being the amazing director that he was, he thought about it and he said, sure, let's do it. So in the movie, you see that actually happen. A cab comes to pick him up, he's out of there. So that was a really cool thing, and it is a very true story. But of course, he reappears, remember, at the end of the movie. After the killers have been killed, he shows back up with Gail to pick up the camera and go again. So he came back at the very end, so he didn't leave for good. He just left for long enough for the killers to get caught, which is very, very smart. Now, Joel, in the limited time that we saw him in Scream 2, I think he was a really likable character. He seemed fun. He had a little bit of a comedic relief to the movie. Some of his lines were really good. And he was just a really likable guy. He's the kind of character that you want to see more of. I would like to have seen him more involved, even in the story of Scream 2, having more scenes with him. But the scenes that we do have with Joel, I really like them, and I really like him. I think they're good, and I think he's good. So I've always hoped that he would return. He was a surviving character. I was hoping we would have saw him in 3. Like maybe he would have had an appearance in Scream 3 working with Gail, or even Scream 4, and even Scream 5. I mean, there was a lot of speculation that he might have been in Scream 5, but he was not, as we know. But he was a really cool dude, and I think that it would be great to bring Joel back. And there's some other things that are in play I'm about to get to in a moment that makes me want to see that even more, because there is a big backstory currently running in Scream 5 that you could completely connect to Joel and would make it relevant for him to come back. And it would not feel forced. It would feel very, very natural. So before I get to that, though, let's think about what are some roles he could play. Like, what could Joel be doing in the Scream universe today? Well, one of my first thoughts is I could see Joel being a television producer or an executive at the network at the television network that Gail's show airs on. So he could have even had a hand, possibly, in Gail getting her own morning television show because of their history together. And who knows, he may be a powerful television executive right now in New York, which is where Gail's show is based out of, her morning show. She has a studio there that she broadcasts from in New York City. So what if he's there? And we'd only got a glimpse of her in 5 on TV, but in 6, what if we get a much larger story around Gail Weathers at her television studio? They're filming in Montreal, Canada, which I've shown you guys images of, and here you go. I'll put a couple up now. These images of Montreal, this is very New York-ish. This is very downtown, skyrise buildings. You could totally pull this off as being in New York City. They could totally do that. So, there's a good chance that we're going to see a city setting for Scream 6. And who's in the big city? It's Gale Weathers. She could have a much, much larger role in this film than we saw in 5. And if that's the case, I would not discount the idea that Joel is somewhere on the premises at the studio there with the network television facility, or he's a producer. Could be either one. Now, another idea for Joel is if he's not involved with Gale's television show, which again, I prefer that personally. I think that's a great storyline. It's an easy connection and it makes sense to me. So I would love to see that. But if he wanted to go a different route, he could still be in the industry, but not in television. He could be in the film industry, in the motion picture business, and perhaps the executive producer, or how about this? The director of Stab 9. Can you imagine that? Joel is actually making movies now, not filming them, and he is the director of Stab 9 or executive producer, and they're coming in to make the requel, if you will, and he's there, and that's how we get to see him again, because he's on set directing very much like Roman Bridger, but in this case, maybe they're back in Woodsboro. Or who knows? Maybe they're in New York still. You could do any setting you really wanted to. But I could see him being as a director there or a producer who's on site while they're filming the movie. And it would totally make sense. So those are just two options I'm going to throw out of what he could possibly be doing in Scream 6. You could write it a million different ways, of course. But those are just two that I think would be really fun. And they really make sense with the history of the films. They just really connect well with Gale and everything. All right. So I'm going to pause for a moment on Joel. And now I want to talk about the other character in this video, Martha Meeks. Now, the last time we saw Martha Meeks was, of course, in her house in Scream 5. You guys know the scene. The whole gang piles in to talk about requels with Mindy and figure out who's the suspects and all this stuff. All that goes down in Martha's house. And it was just a great scene with the whole, Randy Meeks Memorial Theater. I just love that scene. That whole sequence in Scream 5 is one of my most favorite of the movie. I love that whole scene. And Mindy is a beast in that scene, as she is on display right there. Awesome stuff. So we see Martha bringing the snacks in, and saying hi. And she looks up at Dewey and she's like, "Oh, Dewey, you look." And she just shakes her head and she just smiles, and never gets the word out. I just love that. Well, anyway, so I want Martha Meeks back. I think she'll be back. We don't know yet for sure still. I don't believe she's confirmed yet, but hopefully she will soon. And so I definitely would love to see her back. But now here comes the moment that I'm going to connect here that you may have been wondering if I was going to bring up a moment ago. And it's the question of whether or not Joel could be the father of Chad and Mindy, the twins, Martha's twins. Well, let's look a little bit closer at this, okay? I'm going to break this down in a way that is easy to understand and kind of help us decide whether or not we like the idea, and I'll tell you what I think about it. So we know that in Scream 3, Martha says she's 17 years old. All right, so that's the year 2000. Joel in Scream 2, he never states his age. We don't know. But I think it's safe to say he was playing a character probably in his mid-20s, somewhere in that time frame. So for the sake of argument, let's just say in 1997, which is when Scream 2 came out, Joel was 24. That looks about right. I totally could believe him being like 24 years old in Scream 2. All right. So in this scenario, you've got a 7-year age difference. So in order for Joel to be the father of the twins in a legal manner that is not gross and inappropriate, okay, here's the breakdown. The year is 2000. Martha is 17. Joel is now 27 because it's, again, 3 years later from Scream 2. Now, in the year 2021, in Scream 5, Chad and Mindy are both in high school. So I'm going to say for this scenario that they are both 17 years old. So if they're 17 in 2021, they were born in 2004. That makes Martha Meeks 21 years old when the twins are born. Joel would have been 31 years old. Now, that still feels a little uncomfortable. I completely grant you that. 31 to 21 is that's it's a much bigger gap than it would be from 41 to 31. That feels better. But yeah, 31 to 21, it doesn't feel great, but it's fully legal. There's no laws being broken here. So which we've seen happen in this, like Richie and Amber, hello, we've seen that happen, but that's not the case here. So it is very plausible. It is plausible that this could be done in a way that is perfectly legal, maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but at least we can say there were no laws broken to have these kids. All right. So that is a real possibility. At the end of the day, I say yes, Joel could absolutely be the father of the Meeks twins. And it brings me to my next point, which is the twins' last name. And I have to mention that Chad and Mindy's last names, you guys see it on the credits, it's Meeks-Martin. It's Chad Meeks, it's Mindy Meeks-Martin, Chad Meeks-Martin. Well, this is really cool because the actor, again, who plays Joel, I mentioned it earlier, his name in real life is Dwayne Martin. So you've got to love that meta, that the last name of Joel in real life is Dwayne Martin, is the last name they're putting with the Meeks twins. Is that a clue? Is that a connection for us? I think it could be. That's something you would see in a Scream film. That's super meta, and that's absolutely, I believe, could be a hidden, but not so hidden clue for us to look and find. So think about that. Keep that in mind, and we'll see what Scream 6 holds. So tell me, guys, I want to know what you think about this. What do you think about the idea of bringing back Martha and Joel? How do you feel about Joel being confirmed, possibly in Scream 6, if they do that he is indeed the father of the Meeks twins? I want to hear your opinions, your thoughts, your ideas, all your theories. Start leaving your comments below right now so we can discuss it together, and let's see how far down the rabbit hole we can go with Joel and Martha. Well, that's going to be it for this update, but listen, I'll be back soon with more Scream and other horror movie content. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time, this is Craven Something Scary, where it's all horror all the time. Thank you for watching.